All right.
It's 5-3.
Oh, yeah. And actually, it's different than last time. It was not working.
We tried to put a battery into it and get it fired back up today, but it still no go.
On Tuesday it wasn't working, but it showed a different time.
Exactly. Yep. That's
School
right.
gets out at 3 o'clock.
Oh, we're pretty close then.
Not
We're
there
gonna be
yet.
pretty close for a long time.
Yeah. That's good. Long 5 minutes.
All right, so it is 6:30, and I will call this meeting of the Planning Board to order of July 20th. I will begin by reading the roll. Rebecca?
I'm here.
Phil? Not present. Neil?
Present.
Mike?
Here.
Mark?
Here.
Susan?
Here.
And myself present. Alternate members, Zach, Michael Bouchard, and Peter Julia, who I think we heard from is not able to make it tonight. All right. So first up is the review of minutes from the June 15th meeting. Thank you, Joseph, for the very thorough job. This is 11 pages now.
Captured.
I noticed a couple of minor typographic changes, but nothing substantive. If you want to know what those minor changes were, I can tell you. I think you forgot to put the word moved in at some point on page 3. So the first full paragraph, the board members reviewed a submitted application. Hanson moved, I assume, to accept the application.
Yep.
If I did that a lot that meeting, it's probably correct.
You did actually, yeah.
Which I was reminded when I read the minutes.
Or is it that should be a they as well?
What page?
The second to last one. The board members noted that they would like some additional information. But nothing actually substantive.
Good to know, though. Now's the time. Wait to catch them.
Somebody in 10 years is going to read that back and say, yeah, that one.
Very thorough.
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? And
Abstain.
Abstained.
And abstain. Right, so the minutes are approved. Let's see. I'm trying to keep my papers in order here. Right, so have there been any communications received by the board?
There have been. They're included with the different application files as they were pertaining to the applications.
Okay, thank
So
you.
we can cover those when we get to the applications.
So I will mention I also received a communication from the Energy Commission, and they're having a meeting next Thursday at 6, and they requested they asked if I would be able to attend as a representative of the planning board, and I said I would not be in town. I offered to Zoom in if they wanted. And I believe they want to look into some issues related to energy and sustainability and such in town, and perhaps look into some, in the future, some initiatives to put forth. But I believe Rebecca you're able to go next week?
I am able to go.
Okay. So we'll see where that leads. Could be an interesting discussion. All right, so in that case, we are on to public hearings. Our first hearing is a continuation of a public hearing regarding the Frontenac development. And just to read the introduction here, continuing the request on behalf of the ownership entities for Chatteron Lane, Ski Lift Lane, and Point of View Drive for approval of changes from the approved plans, including a cul-de-sac on Chatteron Lane, a cul-de-sac on Point of View Drive, and a fire cistern. All right, so before we begin, Joseph, do you have any updates on your end?
I do not have any updates on my end nor have I received anything, but the applicant is here tonight,
Yes.
so.
Jeff, would you like to, or, yeah,
What's that?
yes,
Yes, Kevin French.
sorry, I realized as I was speaking.
It's okay, couldn't tell with the mask on. These are just some 160 scales, 1 to 100.
You're good? Okay. I'm gonna look at this together, Joseph. And then if you get it the right way.
Excuse me, what's that large? Let's see if anybody wants to see those.
Sure. Take this tiny one.
Oh, okay, you take this one.
Let me move this in between us. There we go.
I have to move you. Okay. This is the top, well, this is kind of the top of the hill.
Don't want to see this paper go to waste.
I'm up from First Street.
That's this one, okay. So we're
There's
looking
Thurlow.
downhill.
Thurlow's over here. First Street.
Yeah.
You know,
This goes out.
Yep.
This is where the wall was.
I
There's just one, they turned this.
remember my household tested positive for COVID. I did not.
I'm good here.
Yeah.
That's what she said too.
Doing our best to quarantine. All good.
I used to ski there when I was a kid.
Did too.
The hammerhead.
Yeah, George Greer. George and Al Greer.
You know, I came up once with her, or came over once, and the old ski lodge was still there, and I'm sure it's still there. We went out, checked it out for a while.
Still there. The one on Wendy's side is still there.
Okay.
But they took the one over here, the one that was down there.
Need some clips? I got a couple.
yeah, I think that's, yeah.
They just needed to locate them on
Someone stealing.
This was the top of the Frontenac slope here. It went that way.
Okay.
Town Hall me.
Okay, sorry.
Town Hall me. Joseph. Okay.
Just to bring you up to speed, this is the, obviously, this is the Frontenac development, comes off of Parker Street, runs up around, and goes up to Point of View Drive and Skylift Lane, and then goes out to Thurlow Street. And it shows on this one, going out to Thurlow Street. What we've done is we've located the changes, or I guess the changes that were done over time, to address those first. One being, there was originally a cul-de-sac at this point, which was originally the end of what we called Phase 1. Phase 1 was a subdivision done in the late 80s by George Greer. And that ended in a hammerhead here. They later made it into a cul-de-sac. When they did Phase 2, which was this section, they put the road in, they eliminated that turnaround, although the cul-de-sac area is still there and it's still part of the road. It's still part of the road right away. Because they were extending the road, there was no longer a need to have a turnaround there. And if, like I said, that area is part of the right of way, and the objective here at the final end of this is to have this whole road taken over by the town at some point in time, which we are working with the selectmen on that. issue. But that is the reason why this hammerhead, this cul-de-sac wasn't built in a circular road. The road just went through, continued on into phase 2 and phase 3. The time that was done, that was, and I don't know, that was early, I guess 2005 or 6, something like that. That change was approved by the road agent, and I believe the review engineer, and
It was also, if I could interject, part of the change on that was a request of one of the abutters.
okay,
And there was a meeting on site that the planning director at the time attended and had given a verbal approval on.
okay,
The unfortunate thing is, and I don't recall who that was at the time, but they never recorded it.
okay. All right.
And that's something that we had stated at a previous meeting.
Yeah, okay. And so that is why that one exists the way it is today. The second issue, going up the road, was originally this cistern was shown on this side of the road. They went in and there was actually better area over here for it. They, with the approval of the fire department at the time, ended up moving the cistern from this area over on this side, which is where it is located now and is in and functional and everything like that. That at the time was approved by the, by, I believe, the highway department, but in particular, it was approved by the fire department. And then, as we go up to here, this was originally designed as a cul-de-sac. When they put it in, because of terrain and topography, they decided it was best if it was done as a T turnaround hammerhead.
That was done at the request of the fire chief at the time.
Okay, and so the road is in now, all paved, and again, when this is turned over to the town and deeded to the town, the fee title will include the cul-de-sac area, just as, same as this one will. And those were the I guess the differences between the original approved plans and what was actually as-built. The other things that we've added since is we put the underground utility lines on, and we've shown the sewer manholes. We are working with the water and sewer department on their requirements for that. In fact, we just got some more today, so we have to look at those and see what those are. But we're not related to you or I guess the town as much, but we are also working with them on that so that we can provide them with a plan so that they can hopefully end up taking over the sewer line. And it's the sewer line, there's no water. There is water in this, but they already, in this phase, but they already had taken that over. So what we're looking at is the area up here. And like I said, we've been working with them on that. I do have, as in this area down here, there's 1 or 2 shut-offs that we have to locate that we haven't been able to find. So we're working with them on that. But that's part of something that will be handled with, like I said, with the water and sewer department. So I believe that planning board concerns were with these 2 cul-de-sacs, basically with these 2 cul-de-sacs and the cistern area. And everything else was done, according to plan.
Thank you. I appreciate you getting this to us. So we did not get a chance to see these ahead of time, so we'll take a moment just to look these over. And
Sure, yeah.
Anybody has any comments or questions on the board?
Well, I guess this has just been going on for so long that I don't have the original list. And Joseph, have you seen this already?
I have not seen this
Okay.
until now. No.
Because I think we just want to make sure that everything on the list of what we were asking for is indeed on here.
I seem to recall there was there was a question about a drainage easement that was at the top. I believe there was a drainage easement on 220/32/7. Has that been resolved with the owner?
Well, I had stated at an early meeting that can be taken care of through
Right, and I'm not saying this, that was just a general question. I think from my recollection, I think the questions that we had on the site plan.
See, when the hammerhead was put in at the request of the fire chief, the drainage wasn't required.
Right, that makes sense. Yeah, I do recall the reasoning for the change,
Yeah.
but it seemed that that property was still being impacted by the easement at the time, but I don't, I think that's an outcome of the change that was made at the time.
I imagine the retaining wall issue is still being dealt with as well.
I'm sorry.
The retaining wall is still being, the one in the right of way?
That's ongoing, yes. They've done some work up there and they're progressing on it.
Okay.
And we do have just a comment from some of the folks on Zoom. If folks are talking, if they could come up to the microphone.
Oh, yeah, well, we'll have a public hearing, open a public hearing in a moment. I just wanted to see if there's any initial feedback from the board.
I think that's questions from the audience that people can't
Correct.
hear at home,
Oh, wait,
Correct, yeah.
okay, got it.
or comments from the
I'm sorry, I
applicant.
misunderstood. Where's the good moment for a reminder that if you do want to speak, make sure you come up to the microphone as well.
Would you like me to restate my question and characterize the response for the Zoom
You can be brief, yeah.
participants? So my question was about a drainage easement on 32-7, and the developer responded that that issue still has to be resolved, but sounds like you're working on it? Okay.
I think we're okay.
Yeah, the developer, the applicant did indicate that he's working on that.
And similarly for the retaining wall in the right of way.
Yeah, also, yeah. And again, those seem to be issues with individual parcels that shouldn't impede
Yeah,
our acceptance of the plan.
And just as a point of clarification, those issues will all have to be taken care of and resolved before the selectmen,
Right.
approve or accept or agree to.
Yeah.
So that's,
I
there's other bites at that apple.
Yeah, I brought that up knowing that it wasn't our responsibility,
Yeah,
but it
okay.
was just an outstanding
Yeah,
question
no, no.
that I had. So I do trust that the select board will address those issues if they're considering acceptance of the road.
So our job is to make sure that the as-built plans, essentially what we're seeing now, matches what exists in reality.
yes. And it has all the things that we necessitate on our as-built as per the subdivision regulations, which included the stuff like the utilities and, which we have now.
Do
Right, yeah.
we have an application, or is this simply consideration of a plan for recording?
Yeah, this is more like compliance basically with a previous
Yeah.
plan.
I think they went through the application process because this has been noticed, and we've been continuing this since.
So we do need to accept this if
Oh.
we haven't accepted this.
I don't think this is exactly an application. I think it's more of the equivalent of a compliance hearing, or
I think we need to approve it.
Yeah.
do we need to approve it?
Yeah.
Correct. So yeah, what's been requested is approval of the changes from the originally approved plan,
Yeah.
which is, it's not a new subdivision approval, but it is something that the board needs to approve.
With a noticed hearing? Yeah,
Or 9 of them.
well, as the
Like,
case
this
may
is
be.
continued hearing.
So I know,
And again, we wouldn't plan on, no pun intended, plan on recording the plan until the selectmen had, signed off and agreed to everything.
In case there are other changes that need to be made.
Right, in case there's something that they require,
Yeah.
I would like the plan that's recorded to show everything that they request, so. And it doesn't need to be recorded to then anyway, because we won't be deeding it until that time.
I'm just wondering about that procedurally. So we would approve, if we decide to approve this plan here, and
There are further changes.
if there are further changes, do we still need the final as-built for what we approve? Do you have any thoughts on that one, Joseph?
Sure, so I think kind of the key with this plan is that, the planning board is the board that has the authority to approve changes to the, from what was originally approved, so I guess it depends on what exactly is being, you mean by other changes, if it's actual changes to what's being.
Like, if there are further changes that the select board requests, which would change what's actually built out, that would presumably need to be recorded, but once we accept this, I'm just kind of wondering about the whole, like, one before the other and making sure everything's done properly with timeframes, and I'm just.
My recommendation is, and I'm willing to put this in the form of a motion, is I'd like to approve this and then put it in the hands of the applicant to say that if there are substantive changes that change any of the boundaries or lot lines or anything along those lines, as a result of work done on behalf of select board requests, that we would simply ask to see those changes before we are asked to sign and record the plan. Because we would still have to authorize we would still have to sign off on the final copy. So, I mean, it just puts a little bit of onus on us to verify that any changes are not.
And I don't expect any changes, but there might be notes or wording or
Yeah.
something that they would want added to it. So I just would, like to be able to do that on one final plan.
Is
I don't mind bringing it back when they've done that, but I just think that's,
I'll second that.
Yeah, that was a motion. How about
I have
that?
some discussion.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion?
Well, first, did we have a public hearing?
We haven't had a public hearing yet.
Oh, yeah.
And second,
I'll hold my motion then.
I would like to just make sure that, because since I don't have the list of things that we need in front of me, I just want to make sure that we've got everything on the list. I just think that would be smart at this point.
Do you want to table it?
I'd love to see the list.
Well,
I mean, I would like to take care of this tonight,
Meeting was, the first one?
but I don't want to miss anything.
Right, no,
Who keeps all their papers?
so first
you
of
did.
okay.
we might have to dig through minutes.
I know I have some stuff left over from, just in case this would come up. So in terms of lists, there's the list of that things that would need to be addressed for acceptance of the road, some of which might be for the select board to handle. There's other stuff that we had asked for, and some of which is to be in compliance with our subdivision regulations. I think from my perspective, so there's the list of things that have changed, and I think most of that is on the as-built at this point. And then there's just making sure that all of the things that we have on the list of site plan regulations are included. And I know the ones we kept pointing out were those changes, of course, and the utilities, like sewer, needing to be noted for where they are. And so we can, anyway.
I mean, there was an engineer, the engineer's list, is there a way do we have that quickly?
I do not have it on me. We can take a look. I would ask the applicant, you've seen the list of as-built plan requirements that the town passed along.
Yeah, and we did go over that with, I believe, the selectmen on that, and their list also for compliance for taking the road over. The one thing that we did meet with them on, and we met with the town engineer, also Mike McNally, was one of the things in the list that mentions that for as-built is road profiles and things like that. They basically waived that requirement because the road is already in, it's paved, everything's there, and we have shown the road and the widths and the drainages and everything else. We just didn't do a new road profile, and which they and with the road agent also didn't require that. And the things that I had, and that there's more, you know, but the things, the major things that we had on the list were the two cul-de-sacs and the cistern that were the major changes from the original approved plans. And that was one of the things that was the thing that they, and I don't know how they, you know, back in the day, how they got changed and didn't get recorded of approvals or things like that. So we're basically just showing where those are now, and those are gonna be on the final as-built plan that the selectmen accept and approve when it comes time to accept the road.
So I do have the list of, oh, you found it as well. okay.
No, John just handed it to me because he's been toting it around. Do you want, I can go through kind of these things, because I think a lot of these from the,
Actually, before I forget, can I also just clarify? It's been a while since this came back before us again, and it's hard to remember where we started. I have here a copy of an application for subdivision. I mean, it seems in many ways like a compliance hearing in many ways, but I do have an application for subdivision here received November 23rd, 2022.
okay.
So perhaps we do have to do an acceptance and an
Oh,
approval.
we've already accepted it if we've been running a public hearing.
Oh, yeah, we have, yeah.
Yeah, I think that was more of a document to compile
formality?
all of the information.
Okay, I mean, it doesn't really seem like a new subdivision, obviously, it's a compliance, but I just found an application here, so, anyway.
So I might suggest that after the hearing, everybody gets a chance, maybe rather than approve, possibly approve it that our job is done and ready for the select board, something to that effect, rather, it's already been approved many years ago.
We have to approve the changes, though.
I'm not sure,
So let's hold off in this conversation for a moment. Rebecca, you were just about to begin when I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah, I'd like to go through the list.
Okay.
if you have it.
Cracking on Chatterin Lane, I feel like that's select board. Something about 1-inch surface course of pavement is required for all of phase 2 and 3. I feel like that is select board. At the sharp curve at the end of phase 1, a cul-de-sac-like circle was included on the plans. This was not constructed, and the road simply had a sharp curve with a consistent pavement. That was addressed as part, the end of phase 1, there used to be a cul-de-sac there. Guardrail is required at the location shown on the plans. The guardrail must be new and in compliance with DOT standards. Is that a select board road acceptance issue?
It might be, but it also might be something that goes on the plan.
Rail's been installed.
Are
Is it-
they new and in compliance with NHDOT standards?
Yeah, I mean, the
That's a
plan
yes
doesn't include
from
the detail, but it
Jeff
does show a
Hiltz.
location.
And are they noted on here? Just to-
Says guardrail.
I don't know if I have them on here, but we do have them located. They are-
Okay.
they are along
It's on
that
there.
side.
Oh, there it is, I see it, yeah, I got it.
All right. Clearing is required at all stormwater structures, ponds, level spreaders, swales, and within 10 feet of the edge of the roadway, pavement in all areas. Assuming that's more road acceptance, or that, okay. It doesn't really pertain to the as-built. Pavement at the intersection of Thurlow and Chatterin Lane is in poor condition. That's not pertaining to the as-built. There's a hammerhead turnaround at the end of Point of Drive. Okay, so that's been dealt with. So that's the one up here. That's a hammerhead, not a cul-de-sac at the request of the fire chief. There's a small 4-foot or so retaining wall at the intersection of Point of View Drive and Ski Lift Lane that is clearly within the proposed right-of-way. Sediment appear to be washing out from behind. So that is underway. The repair to that is underway. The wall needs to be moved to the right-of-way and out of the right-of-way and the swale restored per the approved plans, so. The next is about sewer infrastructure. I think that's a water and sewer district, so that's not,
But it is part of our site plan review regulations, and it's on here now.
It's on here, okay.
It's shown, though,
Yeah.
all right.
the locations of the
All road names and signs and stop signs must be installed. That select board, all drainage pipes and stone swales, spillways, level spreaders that have sediment accumulated must be cleaned out prior to acceptance. That's on the select board level. As-built plans are required to review to verify that the work has been completed per the approved plans. Maintenance guarantee is required for the roadways. Okay, so I think in going through that list, the only thing that remains outstanding is the finalizing of the retaining wall, and is that, and sorry if you've already said that, that is on the as-built where the retaining wall should be and the swales are, they're working their way back to where they are on the
Right,
plans.
right. Actually, the retaining wall had to be taken out,
Okay,
and it's moved back,
Okay.
so.
These are all great findings of fact.
these are the findings of fact.
Yeah, I can just to sort of remind and put all of that into perspective. So, yeah, there was the application for road acceptance, which is filed with the select board per the town's road acceptance policy. One of the provisions of that policy is that the road must be shown on a plan as approved by the planning board, and that's what triggered this. So there's sort of a two-part, they're separate sort of portions of this process. They're the engineering steps and getting the road into, whatever present day standards. And there's also that the road must be, the same as approved by the planning board. Those are sort of the parallel processes of the road acceptance policy. So the select board will be looking at those items when deciding whether to accept the road. They also need to look at whether the road is, as shown on a plan approved by the board. And the other piece, as you mentioned, is that they also are requiring as-built plans. And I do have a document here, which it looks like was sent to, this may have been from the Water and Sewer District, but the town's as-built plan requirements. This is dated June 8th, it looks like. Oh, this must be a more recent one. Just one second. But yeah, essentially the standards for an as-built plan, which, is going to be required by the town's engineer to complete his review, which, you may have already spoken to him and in engaging with the select board. I'm not sure where that stands, but have you talked to, the town's engineer about making sure it's acceptable for his review and that this level of as-built plan is acceptable to him?
So one of the things that comes to mind is that the select board may have requirements that necessitate changes to the plan, but water and sewer may also have requirements that would necessitate changes. So, and I don't, I still feel confident that we can approve the plan from our perspective, but that we might expect to see it again if there are other changes from other boards.
Kevin, if I'm remembering correctly, you've been in contact with Water and Sewer about this whole process? Or
Yes.
Jeff?
I'm sorry.
And I believe you've been in contact with Water and Sewer throughout this process.
In fact,
You want to come up and speak?
Yes, in response to your question, we've had several meetings. In fact, I met with them again this morning briefly, and Joseph was just, I believe, looking at a memo that he received from Water and Sewer. I have the same memo. It is June 8th, 2023. That's the most recent. And that's regarding what their requirements are for the as-built plans.
Okay. Thank you. So are we ready for a public hearing? Yeah, okay. So it is,
Motion on the floor.
well, we do have a motion.
I'm going to rescind my motion if the seconder will allow me to, because we haven't had a public hearing yet.
Okay.
All right. So, thank you. It is 7:05, and I will open the public hearing. If anyone would like to speak, please come up to the podium and pose your questions or comments.
Hi, I'm Julie Bernier and Joan Andresen. We live, if I can figure this out. Thank you.
Yep.
We live at what was the cul-de-sac that's been changed into a hammerhead. We bought the property in 2004, and we met with Jeff, and he let us know that they had changed, at the request of fire, into a hammerhead. It was fine with us. What I don't know is this is the first time I see this, and this is the first time we hear, I heard Kevin say something that's alarming to us, something to the effect of, we'll have the hammerhead, but you'll be still turning over the cul-de-sac to the town. And so for 10 years, that's been our front yard. We have a light post, we have a flag, we planted magnolias. So I don't know where the hammerhead ends compared to what's actually the cul-de-sac. So I guess I'm asking more of them. What does that mean? What does that mean for our yard? And how do we deal with that going forward?
Well, I can kind of show you.
Yeah.
That's where the hammerhead is, and I don't have your plan that shows everything on your
Right.
lot. But if anything any of those changes have been, I think I can say this, any of those changes we've looked at with the town and with the selectmen.
Yep.
And the town engineer, and everything up there is fine for their acceptance.
Yeah.
What I was saying is when ultimately this road is deeded to the town.
Yep.
The entire right-of-way is deeded in that. Because
Right.
right now, your property, as is everybody else's,
Yeah.
is deeded to that circle,
Right.
okay?
Yep.
So that circle is part of the road right-of-way layout. the
Right.
original.
That's what I heard you say tonight that
Right.
is alarming to me, right?
Okay.
So I'm like, how do we deal with that? Because
So-
there's a whole lot of property here that's like our front yard.
So I just want to address, I mean, I do want the conversation to be addressed to the board, and I think there are some pertinent issues here about the right-of-way and whether or not they have any encroachments in them and such from the board's perspective. I just don't want this to become too much of a side discussion.
Yeah. No, I just, and we don't have to go back and forth. I want to know,
Yeah.
what does it mean to us? And how is this something we would deal with you, or we deal with the town, or we would deal with the select board? I don't really know what this means, because
If there's any disputes over the property lines, that really wouldn't be a planning board issue.
Until you want to adjust the property line.
Unless you want to adjust the property line.
yeah, I don't know, who do we even talk to? I don't know what it means. Literally, this is a huge amount of currently, like, what is our front yard, that when, our understanding, right or wrong, when Jeff explained that they had asked for the hammerhead instead, our understanding was that was accepted and approved, and so it never, ever occurred to us that, there was that huge cul-de-sac still there, right? I mean, you say that it's been changed to a hammerhead, then that's what we thought was the road, and so we've stayed 15 feet, away from that, and so I just need to know, where do we go from here? Who do we even talk to?
Did you have a comment?
Just to be clear, it's a right-of-way, it's not it's not an ownership, it's a right-of-way, right?
No, this is owner.
This is ownership, okay.
This is by deed.
If I may,
It's a deed, right?
Yeah, go ahead.
okay, sorry. When this is deeded to the town, the extents of the right-of-way will be fee title of the town. It'll be, so the town will then technically, ultimately own that land under the road and under the right-of-way. So, and I don't know offhand of anything that is in that right-of-way on your property. I'm not saying there isn't, but I don't know of anything other than the driveway.
Yeah, we have well, the stuff I just said.
A light.
Magnolia trees, a light post,
Oh,
a
okay, yeah,
flagpole.
yeah.
Wait, Neil?
Kevin, what does their deed state at this time?
Well,
The meets and bounds.
these lots, all of these lots, are deeded to the edge of the right-of-way.
The circle.
To the, right, circle or, right, anywhere in there, yeah, to the edge of the right, yeah. And,
But in some ways, this is a similar issue to the retaining wall then.
Yeah, I
Right.
think so.
right,
I have a question.
Susan?
So the boundaries on that cul-de-sac have not changed?
no,
They're
they have
still the
not
same
changed.
as when you sold the lots, everything is still the same as it was?
Right, that's, right, as far as the title, as property lines, yes, yes.
So, yeah, it seems, I mean, I don't think this is an issue that will work out
No.
here. I feel
Right.
like this is something that the select, I'm just gonna throw it at the select board, that perhaps navigating or facilitating a conversation between these property owners, particularly in this area.
Yeah, I mean, we own lot 8 and 9, so it's, you know, half of the cul-de-sac, really, right? It's a lot of the cul-de-sac.
It doesn't look like you have too much in there. If this is accurate, so this is just an overlay of imagery on the tax map, and it looks like you might have grass in that space, but I don't see any trees
Well, that might
there.
be old, though. I
It
mean,
might be.
yeah, I think that picture is old. I mean, we've been there for 10 years.
I mean, but what we're doing here
Yeah,
doesn't change the
Yeah,
boundary.
it's okay. I just want to know, where do I go? Sounds like it's the select board,
Right.
right? Okay.
And we'd, be honest, we'll address that when we, you know,
Yeah.
we brought it up, we'll address it with them
Yeah.
when we
I mean,
talk about that.
I don't know how that would work, but I know our preference would be to change the property line to match what the road looks like now, right? Because you have a hammerhead, and then you have a huge cul-de-sac area around it. If theoretically that we weren't able to do anything on that, it would be very ugly, right?
Okay, so,
Thanks.
thank you. Mike, you have a quick
At
comment?
some point, Julie, it might be worth a conversation as the town takes over that road to speak with the town highway department, and Joe Flagnet would be able to.
What's his last name?
Flagnet,
Okay.
F-A-G-N-A.
All right. Thank you.
Are there further comments from members of the public or questions?
Good evening, Dan Marion, 19 Point of View Drive. I'd like to just address the one issue that Phil, is it Phil,
Yes.
brought up, the drainage easement from what used to be the turnaround. That actually goes onto my property, so it's good to know that all the water from stormwater drainage is not going to take our house and go down the hill. I received a letter by Mr. Brian Ray, that's Mr. Hiltz's attorney, several months ago, indicating that at the time the town is ready to approve, Mr. Hiltz will extinguish that easement. And so I have that letter on record. I know you don't have that same letter, but I just wanted to let you know that it's not a concern to us anymore.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Sorry, I forgot I had one more thing. How can we get a copy of this?
You can
you-
probably just have one
Ask
of
you?
the.
Okay, all
Well,
right.
there's
Thank
that, yeah. I would say it's also public record, if you want to contact the town, but
Anything handed to the
Yeah,
planning board is public.
there might also be some extras.
Right, and once it's recorded, it will be available publicly through the Registry of Deeds indefinitely. And any plans that we approve get recorded at the Registry of Deeds, and you can, there may be a fee to access it, but that's not a fee we charge, that's the fee that the registry charges.
And prior to that, anything that's submitted to the town is also
Yep.
public record.
True.
Through the town.
We can keep this on display downstairs until it's approved, or even thereafter.
Okay, let's close
Well-
the hearing and make a vote and then.
Wait,
we can
is,
have one.
would anyone else like to speak in person or on Zoom? No?
There's an iPhone guest and a Matt who are not.
All right, in that case,
Okay.
all right, it is 7:15 and I will close the public hearing.
So I have our subdivision regulations from 2002 here. And it does say that, for amendments, these regulations, oh no, this is, never mind. I spent all this time looking for it and I'm looking at the wrong thing, so never mind, I'll keep looking at it. I was just trying to think for amendments to an application. Do you have that?
I have it here, so, and this, for clarity of motion and everything too, subdivision regulations, section 8C, subsection 4, is modifications of design and improvements. So I'll just read it for everyone at the audience too. If at any time before or during the construction of the subdivision, the board determines that unforeseen conditions make it necessary or preferable to substantially modify location or design of required improvements, the board, after a public hearing per section 4G with notice to abutters and the public, may authorize such modifications, which shall be set forth in writing, signed by the chair. So that's I would, just for, record, I think if the motion can mention that section, that would probably help to clarify.
Which section was it?
Section 8, C, subsection 4.
I'll move that we approve the plan, citing section 8C subsection 4. Modification of approved plans, and I would like to thank both the applicant, both Mr. Hiltz and Mr. French, for preparing this compilation plan for us.
Second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there further discussion? All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, it is approved. Thank you so much, and thank you all members of the public for your patience in this process. And Phil, would you like to make a statement?
No, I just have a question. I was late. Was someone seated in my place?
No.
Or- Okay, all right.
Thank you so much.
While this is still fresh.
Yes.
As the select board often asks for our recommendations and thoughts when they're considering a road for public adoption. Do you want to just give them a couple ideas now while we're thinking of this? And
I still spoke up.
I just have one copy here. Yeah, if she wants it.
Trying to think on my toes here.
As long as I have
A
one.
lot of this is pretty self-explanatory. There are obviously issues in the things that you pointed out would be kicked to the select board probably in the checklist,
I think those are well established.
which are again well established. As I was going to say, yeah.
Select board.
Otherwise, I'm not certain
Yeah.
what else
Yeah.
there is to add at this
I
point.
think just the things that have come up is, I think the water and sewer is something that
Are you gonna come to our board meeting?
we, and also the stuff that, there's a lot going on right now, and I can't really.
Hey everyone, where's that gavel?
All right. I was just thinking about the extinguishing of the easement, something that's been mentioned, but just
Yeah.
making sure that that's an issue that we hear come up, the final as-built, to make sure that any significant changes, we'll need to take a look at them per subdivision regulations, and just recommend that the cul-de-sac right-of-way issue is addressed, so.
Yes.
And just, I feel like these can just be a verbal suggestion for the select board
Okay.
to think about. I don't know, that's what I had on my mind.
I might suggest, and I didn't want to burden Mr. Hiltz as the applicant, but if there's willingness, the town could initiate boundary line adjustments to eliminate those cul-de-sacs and just project existing, that would have to come from the select board, but we would have to have basically an agreement for a boundary line adjustment that would extend property lines out to the right-of-way of the existing road configuration as opposed to the cul-de-sac configuration. But I don't know if that's something they'd want to do.
I think I'd want to leave that in the hands of the select board and the highway department,
Right.
whoever else is
So
involved.
it's a recommendation.
I would just say
They could evaluate that. They may not want to give up the cul-de-sac because it does provide turning radius
Yeah.
for fire trucks. But it's something they could consider.
I think we would be amenable to making sure that happens.
Yeah.
But I think it's not up to us to.
Well, not even
decide.
making sure it happens, just to make sure at least they know about it
Yeah, yeah.
as a request.
I mean, that's, to me, that's kind of covered under we need the as-built to reflect what's actually
Yeah.
there when they're finally recorded.
Okay. And that's all reflected in the minutes. that could be forwarded on, I suppose.
Did I grab these or are these yours?
No, those are.
So, up next on our agenda, we have a continuation of a public hearing for the Page Street storage facility, a continuation of a public hearing. This is from our previous meeting regarding a site plan review application from BICO LLC. The proposal is to construct a self-storage facility along with associated pavement and drainage in 2 phases on parcels 208-097-032 and 208-097-031 located at the end of Page Street. So, and you'll remember from last time, we also, in relation to this same project, approved a subdivision or change of a boundary line adjustment. Boundary line adjustment, I guess it was. Before turning this over to the applicant, do we have any new documentation, Joseph?
There is that letter received from the applicant, but the applicant is also here.
Yes.
It does outline some proposed measures to address things brought up in the first hearing. It also addresses the situation with the town's engineering review. So the town's engineer has reviewed the plans. He's provided
And I believe
the memo in your packet dated July 10th. And then there's a response to that dated July 13th from the applicant, in which he outlines essentially, well, I'll let him outline what he'd like to, I suppose, but just generally a couple of things that were being proposed to address concerns raised at the first meeting, and a request for a little more time to address the engineering comments.
And that was all in our packet?
Correct.
Yes. All right, if the applicant would like to come up and get us up to date.
My name is Harry Blackie, and with my brother Dale, we are the applicants under the name of BICO LLC. We own that property, and it's our application that you're considering. At the last meeting, one of the actions that you took was to require the engagement of an engineer to review the plans, which he did. And produced a letter with 7 or 8 items on it, almost all drainage related. We got that communication last Tuesday. By the time I got it to the engineer, it was Wednesday, and we knew that any input that you were going to consider for this meeting would have to be in your hands, hopefully within 48 hours, but no later than 3 business days. So we knew it wasn't realistic for our engineer to respond, and then the town's representative engineer to look at that. So so I'm here this evening to do 2 things. We considered some of the matters that I'm going to call non-technical matters at the last meeting. We heard your comments. We heard comments from the abutters. So I'm here tonight to deal with some of those and respond to some of those things, and to request a further continuance to the meeting, your August meeting, at which point I'm confident that our engineer and the town's engineer will be able to mediate those issues that were raised by the town's engineer. So those are the 2 things that I'm here for tonight. And I did send you a communication last week outlining some of the things that had come up at the meeting that I wanted to try and address tonight, so that we could at least make some progress. So if it makes sense, I'll just run down through those and let you or anybody ask questions or whatever. So one of the issues that came up was the building color. We had some red doors, and somebody raised the question that maybe it might be appropriate to have a more subdued look. So we have revised the color to a tan building siding with forest green doors, and those colors are attached to the communication that I sent you. So you have those colors. There were a lot of questions about traffic on Page Street. And by the way, since we're not going to be, I didn't anticipate dealing with technical issues tonight. Our engineer is not here, nor is our attorney. So you got to suffer with me. That's all you're going to get tonight. But I do have some information about traffic. First of all, as it relates to existing conditions. So there are 10 existing homes on Page Street. And your subdivision regulations require that when new roads are designed, that you use a traffic count of 8 trips per day per dwelling unit. So with 10 homes there, presumably if we were designing a new street, the traffic count for those 10 houses would be 80 trips per day. There were several comments about the width of the road and it being a narrow road. It turns out that it's not a narrow road. Your subdivision regulations have two widths of roads. One is a 20-foot road for minor streets, and then a 24-foot road, wide road, for anything else. No matter how much traffic is on it, the widest road that's required is 24 feet. We've measured Page Street in several locations, and it has a minimum width of 23 feet. So in terms of your town standards, it wouldn't be considered, I don't believe, a narrow road. Page Street is a dead straight, dead-end road with very little change in topography. Like sometimes they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. And I don't have one of these for everybody, but so this is a picture of Page Street from the site looking back towards the main road. So you can see that the road is straight. There aren't any issues as it relates to sight distance that relate to curves, that relate to changes in topography. So another issue as it relates to existing conditions. Because it's a dead-end road, you would expect that there would not be traffic beyond that which is servicing the uses on the road, as opposed to other roads that might be through roads that would have traffic that were moving through the property. The surface condition, and I think that doesn't show everything, but the condition of the road seems to be, there aren't signs of significant wear. It seems to be in pretty good shape. So the traffic study that we submitted to you suggested that the storage facility would generate 19 trips per day, which, by the way, is less than what would be expected if we built the homes on it that could also be built there. So at 19 trips per day, if we take that and add it to the 80 trips from the houses, we have a total of 99 trips per day. If we built the houses on those two lots, which we could legally build, based on 8 trips per day per unit, the total traffic would be 112 trips per day. So based on your subdivision regulations, the traffic that should be anticipated if these lots were used for residential purposes would be more than for the self-storage. In fact, the self-storage creates an increase of about 21%, and if they were residential properties, the increase would be about 33%. we've already talked about the width of the road. The subdivision regulations call for light traffic roads to have a required width of 20 feet, and any road after that, no matter how much traffic on it, is 24 feet. So I believe that road provides reasonable and adequate access and egress for what we're proposing. There were some questions and comments about signage. So if there is additional signage that the board feels is appropriate given our use, that would help protect the abutters and people and pedestrians, we're happy to provide that signage. And in addition to that, we're happy to install a sign during the construction period that would make it clear that parking on the street is only allowed on one side of the street and would only be allowed in front of the property's frontage as opposed to in front of other residential, any of the existing homes. So that kind of deals with the question of signage. First responders. There was a question about, because we're using a gated system here with a security fence along the frontage and an electronic gate, the question was, how would first responders gain access? And the answer is that they would gain access the same way any tenant of the self-storage facility would. They will have the device that would allow them access. We have, once again, as a result of comments from abutters, we've agreed to restrict the opening hours from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So the access keys that tenants would have would only work during those hours, but the first responders' access keys would allow them access 24 hours a day. There were some questions about site lighting. Our plans included a site lighting analysis that demonstrated that at the property lines that were common to the abutters, that the lumens would be very close to zero, and for one of the two abutters it would be zero, and for the other one it was very, very low. But that's at ground level, so we've agreed to install a fence along that property line. So the lighting engineer has confirmed that at the top of that fence, it would be zero there too. So no light shed onto abutting properties, and all of the lighting is intended to be dark skies lighting. We got a little bit of a quandary here as it relates to the fence with Donna and Greg Patton, because we've agreed to install an 8-foot-high fence along the common property line between their property and ours. The only issue is that this board is not authorized to approve an 8-foot-high fence. The ZBA has to do that. So, there's a note on the plan, that the existing plan that you've already taken in, that suggests, or that says that we will make an effort to get approval for an 8-foot-high fence, but in the minor chance that for whatever reason the ZBA would not allow it, then we would install a 6-foot fence. I don't anticipate that would be a problem, but I've included some language here as a proposal for this board to create a condition as part of the approval process that would require us to submit that application to the Board of Appeals. if that language, it's a suggestion for language that you might include in your approval. That's really all I have to share with you this evening, unless there are more questions. And as I said before, no engineer, no attorney, so you get to listen to me, and it also means that there are technical questions that I may not be able to answer, and we'll be back fully staffed for the next meeting, so.
So this might be an engineer question, but the slightly larger turnaround area for the trucks, that sound probably feasible?
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
No problem. Yep.
Can I ask a question about your lighting, sir?
Yes, sir.
Over here, sorry. I apologize, I wasn't here at the last meeting, so if you're reiterating information you shared last time, I apologize.
No problem.
Are you planning to light the site throughout the night, even though, for security reasons?
That's a great question. Yeah, we will have the capability, the operator will have the capability to dial down the lighting with the individual fixtures, or to turn some fixtures off. We anticipate, for security purposes, that there will be some level of lighting on the site.
Okay.
But during 24 hours a day. But again, 0 lumens at the property line, and we anticipate that it would be dialed down during the night hours.
And there was, in last week's application, or last month's application at least, a lighting diagram showing all the
Right.
illumination, yeah.
Thank you.
So theoretically, there should be no activity at night.
You mean during the night hours?
Yeah.
It's gated, 7 to 7?
It's
If
ga-
it's locked at 7,
Right,
there shouldn't be anybody there.
correct.
Unless they
But I suspect they would still like the insurance of having site lighting for security reasons. I mean,
Yeah, I think that,
A fence won't necessarily.
I had the same question.
yeah, that's exactly right. We think it's not just our security, it's the security of the neighborhood. You know, we want to discourage vandalism, not only for ourselves, but for the neighborhood. And we think that some level of site lighting is probably appropriate.
You have cameras too, right?
We haven't talked about that, but that probably would have some of that, yep. One other thing that's not on my list here, I just happened to think. So, we, for buffering, we've agreed, we've met with the abutters, and we've agreed to provide the buffering that each of them has requested. We just, one of the things that we've done to educate ourselves is we've looked at all of the other storage facilities in the town. I think it's all of them. We've identified 4. And what we have found is if we install buffering here of any type, landscaping or buffering, it will be the only self-storage facility in town that has that. There's no site in town that we've seen that has any fencing, backspace, any privacy fencing, any buffering, or any landscaping.
On the topic of fencing, before we get to a public hearing, there was the question of the character of the neighborhood and the ZBA and the type of fencing around,
Right.
on that particular fence.
Yes, sir.
Which would probably be good to get to some level of resolution to this evening, so at our next meeting, we could have that set.
I agree.
Do you have any thoughts on your side about what might be appropriate that we can consider?
Yes, so the plan calls for and now I'm talking about the security fencing along the frontage of the property. So the plan clearly shows a 6-foot chain link fence. And one of the things, with the 2 abutters, what we're proposing is solid fencing that will block their view of the buildings. But with respect to the frontage, again, what we don't want to do is to create an area where people on off hours could be on the site and doing things and not be visible. We don't want to put up a visual barrier between the street and the buildings along the frontage that would make it a better target for vandalism. So that's what that's what our plan calls for, is a 6-foot chain link fence and an electronic gate.
Does anyone on the board have any thoughts about that solution?
Well, I just think that having cameras would be a good solution for that problem.
Well, in terms of the mandate that we have as a board of determining what kind of fence is going to go in there, that, as per the zoning board, would meet the character of the neighborhood.
I think public input would help.
Yeah, and we'll open that in a moment. I'm curious if we have any thoughts before then, but you're right. Some of the abutters might have thoughts.
We don't mandate security systems, though. I mean, if it's not in our site plan regulations, I don't think we can compel it, but.
So the purpose of the fence is to provide security and to create a barrier between the storage facility and the adjacent neighborhood. Now, it seems like the storage facility wants something that's a little more transparent so they can see through it, so there's a little less chance
That makes
for
sense.
burglary and vandalism. But the abutting neighbors, I guess, are not gonna want just a picket fence,
Right.
or not a picket fence, or like a,
Chain
what am I thinking, a split rail fence. And a split rail fence, a chain link fence isn't particularly attractive. Is there something that can sort of serve both purposes?
I can tell you this, that I believe there is only one self-storage facility in town that has a security fence. It's in an agricultural zone. It's in a residential area, and the security is provided by a 6-foot chain link fence.
Which one is that?
That is
It's on 3A.
the Reese's, yeah.
It's on 3A, so that's gonna be that's the highway commercial, right?
It's an agricultural zone with residences directly across the street.
If I'm thinking of all 4 of the storage units that are in town, they're all on a major road, which I think does distinguish a little bit.
2 on
from-
Tenny Mountain Highway, right? One behind Kirk's. There's the new one down by the vet office.
There's the one on 3, by the Bridgewater Town Line,
Okay, that's the one I was missing.
right? That's still Plymouth, right?
Is that
It is
the
Plymouth.
associated with constructs, that area? Okay,
And
yep.
then the one on 3A. But
Yeah, that
they're
makes
all in, I would say the character of those neighborhoods is different than what we're talking about.
I agree.
here.
Yeah.
We approved one on Highland Street
Yes, which is also
one?
kind of
Right.
buffered from the road.
Right.
in a neighborhood.
They haven't built it
I would say the character of that is a bit different than what we're talking about here.
I agree. I don't think any of those are really residential. Not residential like this is residential. I mean, they're all ag zone, but, well, the one on Highland Street's not ag zone. But it's not really residential either.
We do
There's not
have
much
some
around
highway
it.
commercial.
Yeah, I don't really know how to describe the character of certain fences. Not really a fencing person. But I know there are the metal fences, often black with the vertical bars, and which might look slightly more residential in character, probably a bit more on the pricey side, I imagine.
You talking about the privacy slats?
Not really slats, just like the black bars.
You're talking about more of like a wrought iron look.
Yeah, it's that kind of look, not necessarily made of wrought iron, but that kind of look.
Yeah.
I don't know. Perhaps we can have the public hearing and then come back to this. Unless anybody has any final thoughts first.
I guess I think that it's not necessarily our job to say, make fence recommendations. I think we can certainly talk about it, but I
Yeah.
think it's maybe more our job to look at the fence as presented and say, yes, that
Well, I guess
fits the charge.
and we have to decide what's been presented as a chain link fence, and we have to decide whether or not we're okay with that. as per the ZBA's recommendations to consider the character.
Yeah, that was the background on that, was that they received a special exception for a 6-foot fence in the front setback from the ZBA, and the ZBA placed a condition on that special exception as follows: the fence will fit within the character of the area, and that was to allow them to go above 4 feet with the fence in the front setback, and that was a couple months ago now. That was all the specificity given in that
Yeah.
condition, though. It doesn't dictate what the character of the area needs to be.
Was there when they received the special exception for a 6-foot fence, was there discussion of an 8-foot fence at the time?
Not for the front, this was along the road frontage specifically. So as a 6-foot fence on the side setback doesn't need any ZBA approval, but it did in the front setback. So at the time, I believe that was the plan, although the applicant may correct me if I'm wrong there.
Perhaps while we ponder this a moment, we can have a public hearing? Yeah. Okay. So it is currently 7:46, and I will open the public hearing. If any members of the public would like to speak? If you're going to introduce yourself and then...
Rick Patton, 25 Main Street. We are the abutter for Phase 1. Yes, there's been discussion on the fence. It was our understanding that it was going to be 8-foot chain link with the privacy slats. That's what we've been pushing for. If they wanted to put in green, brown, whatever, just, we don't want to look out our windows and be watching the sides of a storage facility, if this should go forward.
Just to clarify, and for that particular fence, you're talking about the one that we're talking about right now, which is the frontage fence?
The frontage fence doesn't matter. I
Okay.
mean, they went, 4-foot fence was too short.
Yeah.
Obviously, people could just jump over it. So to have them go a 6-foot chain link fence with the electric gate makes sense. That's not something we're really gonna see because it's gonna be down the end of the street. Our concern was the property line that goes, where we abut. And so that's why we brought that discussion up. 8-foot rather than 6-foot. We don't want somebody who's in the storage facility just hopping over the fence, a 6-foot fence. I mean, I'm 6 feet tall, and I've seen people jump over 6-foot fences, where 8-foot fence is a little more of a challenge. And with the security slats in it, they aren't gonna be able to get over as easily. We also have bears in the neighborhood, and, people say, why would a bear be interested in a storage facility? I've talked to people that are familiar with storage facilities, and the people store barbecue grills and food product, and the bears get hungry and they go in. They can cause a lot of damage. Your suggestion of security cameras, there have been issues with people who don't belong in properties going into people's properties on Page Street. When that incident happened 2 years ago, I put in security cameras on my home. I know when somebody's in my yard, whether it's the guy reading the water meter or UPS delivering a package, I get an alert. When the bears go through and the animals go through, I get an alert. I think it makes sense. I know it's not a requirement that you can place on them, but, like Neil said, put security cameras in, and then you'll know when somebody's there, whether they're supposed to be there or not. One of the other issues we have is the engineering for the drainage. According to what we saw on the plan, they're looking at putting in 98% impervious coverage between asphalt, concrete, and buildings. The proposed property is right beside of a pond. With all the rain that we've had, that pond is within 2 feet of the top of the pond. It's about to overflow. We've been down there the last couple of days, and it's way up. I do have pictures where it's at now. There's about 2 feet of sandy soil from the top down that runs from that pond. When we put in our house, we dug the foundation. At about 2 to 3 feet down, the soil turns to this bluish gray river bottom. It's almost like clay. When that pond is at bank full, within several weeks, it migrates through the soil and starts dumping into our basement. I have pictures, we took video, I took video while we were building our house, so I have vid caps that show, you can see the lines of the river bottom where the hard pan is in. We had the comment that they've never seen that, but it's there around the pond. The drainage system that they're proposing to put in of dry wells, I'll tell you right now, that's not gonna work. Because if you go down right now a couple of feet, you're gonna find water. As that pond fills up and starts to overflow out through the swale, you're gonna have water a foot below the surface. We have, at my business next door, they put in not just one, but 2 dry wells to handle water in their parking lot. Those 2 dry wells fill up, overflow, and then flow over into my business parking lot as well. I have pictures of that. So when the question was asked last month, where was the site study done for the engineering for the drainage, it wasn't on the proposed property where the storage facility is going to go. It was elsewhere on the property. You know, it doesn't do you a lot of good to have drainage studies done where you're not going to be building.
Just to respond a little bit. First of all, I appreciate all that extra information, and I believe one of the things that we're going to be addressing next month is some of the drainage issues after the engineer has reviewed, he has already.
Yep.
You heard the timeline. And we'll be looking further into that drainage system for next time, once the applicant has a chance to more completely respond.
Yeah, I gathered that when Harry was talking, but, so I do have pictures if you'd like to present them to the engineer, the town engineer, or if he's already come to the same conclusion that some of the proposed methods aren't gonna work.
You know, I wouldn't mind seeing them.
Okay.
You need them back, or can they? All right.
Maybe they can end back at Joseph at the end.
Sure, put them in the.
Aren't they, they're identified at the top. As far as what the pictures are.
Has the town engineer already been out?
Yeah, so we'd somewhere in here have an engineering report.
Mike Ahern had been down on Page Street a number of years ago when the pond used to overflow and run down Page Street. And he grabbed his camera and started taking pictures, because it was bad. But
Is there an outlet to the pond, or is it's?
no. That pond is,
There was an outlet.
well,
It wasn't at one time.
there is a swale now which allows it to overflow at the same level where it used to flow out onto Page Street, and now goes out through a swale. That was not an actual pond years ago. That was a sand pit that they used when they did the clover leaves and was putting Interstate 93 and the on and off ramps. There are several locations where our Army Corps of Engineers, I believe it was, used local sand pits to do their construction. It was my understanding that once they were done with their construction, they were supposed to come back and restore the property to as how it was when they started. When they came back, it was full of water. They said, oh, wetlands, we can't touch it. So then it became the neighborhood and the town's problem.
That's the way we always understood it. That's the struggle.
Does anybody have any questions? All right, well, thank you very much.
Oxidation, that's seasonal, that's.
Oh, okay.
Donna Patton, 25 Page Street. I was
reviewing the meeting from last time, and comments were made that we were placing a lot of emphasis on the traffic and things like that, and not a lot of comments, on the drainage. The drainage is a big concern to us because we abut the pond. And so I mentioned back when Plymouth Woods, I gave you the deed for Plymouth Woods, that shows the restrictions as a result of all the meetings that took place because of the drainage issues. We had a Sunday during that time where the pond overflowed, and as Greg said, Mike came down and saw what we were dealing with, and he did take pictures and made a bunch of phone calls, and we had town officials down on that street all day long, all into the late afternoon, seeing what was going on with that. I just want to let you know that the impervious surface, the buildings, it is a big concern of ours, because right now it's trees, it's vegetative growth, it's sand, and water can infiltrate. You start putting buildings and everything, it is a big concern of ours. Okay?
Thank you. Any further comments in the room or on Zoom? Oh, yes.
Because of the closeness of the property line of ours and the pond and the size of this project, I was wondering if the town planning board would consider doing a site walk. Just come down and see what's down there. If you would be willing to take a look. We presented pictures at the last meeting. I took pictures, showing where our property line is and the pond. But just to see it, and where, it's one thing to see it on paper, and see pictures, but to actually physically see it and, be able to place where everything is going.
I'll put that before the board in a moment. Any further comments? Okay. So, well, actually, just to address that issue right away, do members of the board feel that we would like to do a site visit? Or do we feel we understand well enough from ourselves and the engineer what's going on?
I would agree with a site visit.
I don't think it's a bad idea. We do it during our work session. I'm just worried that
Our work session is going to be a joint session with the housing committee as well.
Can we do it before the work session?
yeah.
So
I'm
maybe at 5:30 on the 2nd or 3rd, whatever. What's the date of that?
the 3rd.
The 3rd?
August 3rd?
Yeah, it would be the 3rd, yeah.
Might also help determine how that fence fits in that neighborhood.
I think
Looking-
seeing the context would be, yeah, you're right.
So I would ask before we make any final decisions, would the applicant be okay with us doing a site visit on the 3rd of August?
3rd of August?
Yeah.
5 o'clock? 5 o'clock?
At 5:30?
5:30?
Maybe? An hour before the
Yeah.
meeting?
Absolutely.
Okay. So is this what the board would like, should we have a motion maybe?
Any motion?
Do we?
We can just continue to then.
Or is it gonna be a public hearing, or is it just gonna be
We're in public hearing now.
We are currently still in public hearing.
okay.
It should be continued.
Well, I know it needs to be continued if we're not gonna approve. Does it need to be continued for us
We'll do a site
to
walk.
the third, or can we just do a site walk without continuing the public hearing and continue the public hearing to our meeting on the 17th?
If we don't continue the hearing, I don't believe we can discuss anything.
So the board, yeah, the board has to have the site visit be a noticed public meeting.
We're gonna have a quorum there.
Which, you know,
We
if
are.
it's gonna be announced, and the public has the right to attend. You can announce a date for a continuance of the hearing that isn't that date if you wanted, or you could continue it to that time and then continue it again to the 17th if you wanted to hold off on, that would be sort of the board's discretion of how they wanted to address the hearing. The next business meeting is the 17th of August, but the board could choose to continue the hearing first to a site visit and then to a
Yeah.
further meeting. It's discretion of the board.
And then we can get more context on the fence issue as well. I will say it seems from what we've been hearing on the fence that many of the abutters are not necessarily opposed to a chain link fence on their adjoining property lines, which might be different, of course, than the frontage property line, but
We might get more input
yeah.
on a visit.
Okay, so should we just continue then to 5:30 on the 3rd? It was right? Okay.
So moved.
So we have okay. So we have a motion and a second to continue to the 3rd of August at 5:30 at a site visit. Is there any further discussion before we close the public hearing? Or continue the public hearing, I should say? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, so we will continue our public hearing on the 3rd of August at 5:30 on Page Street. Thank you very much, and we will see you then.
Let's take a break.
Okay. Okay, so this here.
We appreciate all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good night.
guys.
All right.
We will notice a second meeting, public meeting of the planning board for 5:30 on August 3rd on Page Street as the location. And the agenda for that, it sounds like, will be, include a continuation of this hearing.
Yes. All right.
And then the board would reunite back here presumably for the other previously scheduled 6:30 PM meeting.
So, up next, we have a continuation of a public hearing for Last Chair Brewery expansion, a continuation of public hearing regarding an application from Kevin French on behalf of TLC Zuba LLC for a site plan review to continue in addition to the existing Last Chair building to allow for an expanded dining area along with a function room, brewery, storage, and retail space, as well as a new septic system on parcel 21406 located at 5 New Hampshire Route 25.
I would like to note that there are 5 storage places in town, because I forgot about the last year. What's that? No?
Oh, yeah, we talked about that last time, in fact.
Fair enough. There was though, right?
All right.
Okay.
So, would the applicant like to speak and get us up to date?
Last time you asked for a couple things. One was you wanted a drainage plan, which we have done, and some goose copies here. And Bruce got to assume, but it's not out of practice. go over it with you, because it's fairly straightforward. The other thing that you asked for was something on the lighting, to put a note on the plan, which we've added, that they are all down-facing and back sky compliant. Mike did provide, these are just copies of what they would look like. Basically just a
Thank you.
downcast light that would go over the
Thank you.
I also have Mario Ocaretto with me tonight from Brown Engineering, who prepared the drainage plan. If you'd like a spelling on that, it's Mario. But anyway, he's the drainage guru for, and worked on the plan, so if you have any questions, he can address those. And just to show you basically what we did is we designed the drainage, the parking lot to slope off and run down into some chambers under the front area that's the impervious pad, the pervious patio.
It's like everything. See that one?
So, what we also did, so that you will know, is we designed the drainage to accommodate future parking as well. You know, before, we mentioned that we may be back at some point in time for more parking, because we think we might need it. So in this design, we designed it, we've shown it on the plan just to show you where it was, or is it, you know, making plan. But just to know that the drainage design was planned to handle that additional parking at that time. So when this site is constructed, it would be put in now for that future use. Basically, and like I said, Mario can go over this in greater detail, but this is something that basically just shows the watershed area that was calculated that's coming down onto this lot. And when it's done, theoretically, the stormwater runoff afterwards is not an increase from the pre and post development. And again, I say that these are just storm intercept, what do you call them? The chambers?
Storm tech.
What's that?
Storm tech.
Storm tech chambers. And
designed
there's
this.
7 of them that basically are under this pervious patio area.
Stone around
Just
them,
collect the
they have
runoff
capacity to handle.
from the parking lot and be directed into that, and then held over time, and then overflow out into the existing catch basins on the street.
These underneath the parking area?
What's that?
Are they under the parking area?
No, they're in this area.
They're in the swale?
The-
Or-
Yeah,
yeah.
the storm techs are under the front area, patio.
Is there a schematic of that structure?
Is there, pardon me?
It's on
Is there a
the last
schematic of
page.
Yes, they're shown on, I think it's sheet 3. Yeah, this
Okay.
is the,
Great, thank you.
yeah.
So, oh, here they are, right here.
Oh, okay, I see it.
That's all crushed stone in there.
This is what we do.
What flood did you calculate to?
Pardon?
What flood did you calculate to? Is it 50 or 100?
Yeah, it's sized to handle the 50-year storm event without surcharging the catch basin, which is the inlet. But the Plymouth ordinance calls for a 10-year post to be less than the pre. It was the existing site. It's all A soil, so the existing site 10-year storm event only lets out 0.01 CFS. So very little runoff. So in order to meet that criteria, we had to be less than that or equal to. And the way it's designed right now, including that future development, will have a zero runoff at a 10-year storm event. It'll infiltrate. It's great soils out there.
So if you get a 50-year event, you think it can handle it?
Yes, it's modeled. In fact, in my report, I, although not necessary for Plymouth, I incorporated the 50-year storm event results.
Thanks.
We'll just come enjoy a beer. Looks like a great plan.
Any objection to opening a public hearing while we do some of this? I know it's not very full. So, it is currently 8:12, and I will open the public hearing. If anyone has any comments, questions, Zoom? No? Still 8:12, and I will close the hearing. So how do we all feel? I know we just got some new information to look at.
I wasn't here at the the last meeting, John. And I don't have the notes or the minutes memorized.
Of
Were there
course.
concerns that were raised during that
Well,
meeting? Was it drainage?
Drainage was one of them. Their new system to handle the brewery seems, we also talked about a bit. The fact that there wasn't too much of a landscaping plan came up.
Do you like the lighting?
And I'm trying to recall what else there was. Anybody else
I think
recall?
the only
anything else?
other one was the lighting.
The lighting.
The lighting that Neil just mentioned, yeah. So it looks like a bunch of those issues have been addressed. There were some thoughts, I think Neil had some thoughts at the last meeting about incorporating some of the potential landscaping and drainage together. I'm not sure, was that you, Neil?
It looks
mentioned
good.
that? Looks good to you?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think my concerns are addressed.
Okay. Do we have any facts to report here?
I have an aside before.
Yeah?
There was a case in, I think it was in Effingham or Ossipee, where they had 100 pages of findings of fact.
Was it a contentious case?
It was a very contentious case, but 100 pages of findings of fact.
I think we should top that. We can do 100.
Tonight. No.
They were not prepared by the board, they were prepared by the board's legal.
Wow. Okay.
So,
I think I know what case that is.
I think this plan it fits in the neighborhood.
Okay.
That's crude enough for you. I don't know.
I have a question, I guess, about the lighting plan, if I may.
Yeah.
The lighting that's shown is all building mounted lighting? Is there any proposed lighting for parking lots or
No, we have no-
landscape lighting?
We have no lighting now along the parking lot, so the building will light up, obviously, the building around.
Yep.
If you've been there now, it's pitch black.
Yep.
We have solar lights at the entrance, because there's no electricity down by the entrance yet, which the plan would be is to run electric to the entrance and have lights at the entrance, because the biggest complaint is you can't see the driveway coming in, which is tough, because it's obviously a left-hand turn off. So we'll have lighting down there, it'll just literally be lanterns at the entrance to get people in. Parking lot will only be solar lighting, we're not gonna run parking lot lights. I know my neighbors next door, the school has a big telephone pole with a big, huge light on it. I haven't really felt the necessity to have that. I have security lights in the back, that's off the building, that shines behind the building. The police, I see them on camera, you know, patrol overnight, so they appreciate that the back's lit up. It's the only restaurant that I know of that's a 360 restaurant, which truthfully sucks, because people drive behind the restaurant, and I don't know the last time any of you have driven behind a restaurant, you usually don't. So we literally have to keep a 360 view
Appearance.
of the restaurant, which is tough, but it helps because the parking lot is right there. We'll put solar lights in the parking lot as well, but as far as we've had no issues with parking and no problems with out lights in the parking lot. We close at 9, so right now our lights barely go on before we close. Obviously in the middle of the winter when it's dark at 5, it gets a little more hectic, but we haven't had any parking issues without lights in the parking lot itself.
And no safety issues for pedestrians or anything?
No, we have, it's luckily, we don't, and like I said, the police are really good to us up there, and they're always around. We have cameras outside, we have lights that shine outside, we have sensor lights out by the back brewery area as well, so if somebody's there, the lights come on, the cameras come on, so it really deters people from really hanging out up there, which is good.
I wasn't even just thinking safety, security safety issues, but also just like navigating oneself in the dark.
Oh no, it's, when people leave, generally, they never have issues getting to their car.
Yeah.
It's when people are in their car, I'm always worried, but they all have headlights.
Yep.
There's never been an issue of someone not seeing. The biggest issue has really been the entrance. That's the hardest thing. And it's not that they couldn't get in once they get to it, it's they missed the entrance and had to turn around. And all the lights on the outside, the soffit lights, for all those halos, I don't know if you've ever seen those lights. They're incredible. They have 5 different settings. They have dimmers on them. We'll have them on timers, so the building itself will light up. It won't be any light pollution whatsoever. There's nothing, no up lights. All the lights around the doors are barn style kind of shaded light that just lights up the doors. We don't really want a lot of light necessarily. It's kind of dim all the time, even the inside.
Okay.
I will note that the elevations for this building do seem to match our design guidelines for our buildings, having articulations and such. And
Yep. Probably the first one we've seen that matches, that works.
We want to make it match to what it is. We don't want something to look totally different. We want it to look basically the barn style, rustic style.
So I would offer finding a fact that the, is met our parking requirements.
and not gone over.
It has not gone over beyond what our zoning ordinance allows. I would also say that the applicant has provided an extensive stormwater management plan.
The applicant is not changing the use of the site.
We're just sharing findings of fact that will lead to a decision. Did you close the public hearing?
I did.
But 45 seconds or less after it
Yeah.
opened.
I didn't know you referred to that as Plymouth Rock.
Say again?
I was just
Plymouth
looking,
Rock?
yeah.
I want a t-shirt that says my rock is bigger than yours, but. Around here, not
It's not really a finding of fact, but I just noticed that.
Do you have the septic permit already, or is that in the works? That's in the works. Okay. Yeah, that's in the works. So the applicant is working on the septic requirements with DES, applicable to breweries.
All of a sudden now, applicable breweries.
Suppose the finalization of that could be a condition.
Should make everyone come up with one finding of fact.
Mine with parking.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't fair that I took like 3 or 4 of them.
How many do
The
we have?
applicant stated no increase in stormwater runoff at the 10-year event.
Yep.
That one?
The lighting is all downcast.
Yep, that works. I think it's a good plan. I think it's ready to
For an
rock and
expansion of
roll.
an existing use, sounds pretty sufficient. I will remind everyone that on our staff report, on the comments and recommendations, there are a few things that you might want to take note of before we come up with a, like, bullet number 3, a motion.
Oh, that the condition should be that the applicant execute a development agreement with the town and provide funds in escrow to allow for construction inspection by the town's engineer.
That kind of thing, yeah.
The board should also consider if a site reclamation bond would also be appropriate for the project.
We'll have stands in the new plans as well, obviously.
The development agreement and the funds in escrow are pretty standard. I don't know about the site reclamation bond. I don't know if we have it.
Don't you know about it?
Given the status
How
of the
standard
existing
it is?
business, I'm not sure that, I feel like that's as important as the engineering review.
Yeah, I think the engineering review is important.
Yeah.
I'd be willing to waive that site reclamation bond.
All right.
Rebecca, do you want the honors?
Yeah, sure. I'll make a motion that we approve the application, with the condition that the applicant shall execute a development agreement with the town, provide funds in escrow to allow for construction inspection by the engineer, and, pending any state, permits.
Septic approval. State septic approval?
Yes.
That'll be the one, yeah.
I was trying to be more blanket, but the septic approval from DES is what I was getting at.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to conditionally approve this application. Is there any further debate or comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? All right, approved, and congratulations, and wish you the best in your and the business.
Having a good night.
Who gets a golden shovel?
I want to say that in 2012, I was on the board, and we approved for the automotive technology repair business. That was an interesting one. Very interesting, so.
At this
Good
site?
job, what you're doing there.
I don't think it was as interesting as the ZBA meeting for the storage unit.
The what?
Thank you, guys.
All right,
The first last chair iteration they were having a storage unit in the,
Oh.
and there was
You on that, Rebecca, in 2012?
no.
Were you, Neil?
I
I think it was John Renlet. He's select
think
board.
I was on zoning board at that time.
Very interesting.
Because the next year I became a selectman.
And don't know if one planning board member can spare one of those copies of the drainage plans for the files.
Oh.
I only really need one. I can make copies and give them back, but just to make sure we have.
Find it again.
Guy's been here for 6 months now, he's starting to ask for a lot.
Just one copy. That's all.
That's good.
One copy.
I like the fact that he designed
Getting
for
a
a
little
50-year
demanding.
flood event.
The 50, all the 10, 25, 50, 100,
Well,
those have
the
all been-
town
those are
requires 10,
Right.
but we're seeing hundreds, you know?
On a regular basis.
Actually, can I just, I'd like, actually, let's keep this piece of paper out so I remember this. The brewery is permitted under a use category of manufactured goods sold on premises, which is no longer in the zoning ordinance.
Yes, that is
Is
true.
this no longer allowed in our?
Where are you doing
Well,
that?
it was lawful at the time that it was established, so it's fine.
No, I just mean like, I obviously for that it's fine. If somebody wanted to do this now.
Yeah, I have no idea why that was removed. I don't know the history of that provision. I know that it was in there at the time, and it's no longer there. So
Is there something else that would cover this now?
I'd have to look. I mean,
Just like a
we have
commercial-
restaurants.
Yeah,
Commercial use of restaurants?
I think that was the determination, that we couldn't think of something that would fall under that category.
That would also fall
It
under.
would also fall under something else.
Okay.
Um,
That caught my eye. I'm like, what is that?
Take a bakery, it's also been applied to in the past, bakeries,
he got
breweries,
There
that kind
was
of
some
business.
residual strange thing that I'm seeming to remember about something happening in the downtown.
So it's not actually taking out any uses, it's just
Yeah,
redefining them a little bit.
yeah.
Okay.
That would be
Oh,
my
I have-
guess.
That was if my memory
like it.
serves
It's a lot of fun.
correctly,
Is it?
that
Yeah.
was not intended to eliminate any particular
Yeah, yeah,
use.
yeah.
It was because it was really not applicable.
It just set an alarm
Yeah.
bell off in my head when I saw that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there was something,
yeah.
some sort of hangover to another time where there was like, you couldn't have a print shop or a bakery in the downtown area. It was like excluded something because of, I don't know.
Oh,
It was
okay.
something weird and political that was
Got it.
from
Um,
a long time ago.
So we have an application and public hearing, Smith Bridge Road minor subdivision. Minor subdivision application from T&T Mountain Investments LLC to divide parcel 212041, 12 Smith Bridge Road, into two parcels of 40.54 and 3.05 acres. I'm assuming, as the sole person left in this room, you would be the applicant?
I've never been here before this year. I had no one to talk to. So, good evening, I'm Trevor Presby, how you doing? I'm here to represent TNT tonight. We're trying to do a minor subdivision, as you just said, to make a 3-acre lot that will actually be on Route 25, off of a piece of land that we own that's on the corner of Smith Bridge Road and Route 25. I mean, it meets all of the setbacks, it meets all of the road frontage, it's all of the requirements, town water, town sewer, so it meets all the sizes of what you guys are requiring. So I don't really know if there's really much to talk about with it that I can help you with. Does anybody have any questions about the location or anything, or?
Is that piece of land buildable?
Yes, it is.
That 3-acre piece?
So what we don't have is
It's next to the
completed
brook, isn't it?
checklist.
It is, yep. There is some upland that's not
got an
wetlands, right, it's
acre of-
shown on the plan as
Got an
being,
acre that they could
yeah, give or take,
get town sewer anyway.
right.
Actually, I should also mention, of course, since we've been doing all continuations this
Highway
evening,
frontage, too.
that the process is, we'll first have to look at the application to see if it's complete, and then
Yep.
determine whether or not
Sure.
to approve it. I believe, Rebecca, you were just saying something about issues of
We just don't have the completed checklist, so we're gonna have to go through that to make sure. Do we have a bigger version of this?
There should be a couple floating around.
I have the tabloid size, is that the,
There were two 24 by 36s.
Oh, they folded up.
There's one in front of you there, Phil.
This?
Yep. I think there should be a second one somewhere.
Have you applied or gotten the driveway permit yet?
No, we have not done that.
That's a state issue.
Correct, would not be town.
Right.
I think we would hold that more to the, this needs to go to a site plan review, right?
Yeah, that was a comment received during the departmental review from Ross. about Ross Wood, that is, at an HDOT, just asking the board to think about discussing plans for access, but it's correct that decisions on driveway permitting for these, they're both state roads, so that would be a state driveway permit for any new driveways or changes in use on an existing driveway. So that is in the departmental comments, but correct, it's a state question.
I know the state is considering redesigning the intersection.
It's in the 10-year
It's
plan.
on the 10-year plan.
Correct.
Yep, that's for the corner of Smith Bridge Road, right? So we're a little bit more, we're right beside where the Ford dealership is.
I think they're thinking about having a circle.
So intersection improvements at the Smith Bridge Road, Tenny Mountain Highway intersection are in the 10-year plan, as you stated, for 2032. The design is scheduled to begin around 2027. So we don't know we don't have the engineering on it yet of what that may look like, or, essentially what we know is that in a few years, there will be a process to begin designing it, and then in theory, by 2032, it would be under construction. Whatever intersection improvements are determined to be the best alternative in the outcome, at least under the current 10-year plan, assuming everything stays the same with what's currently in the 10-year plan and DOT's priorities, funding, all that. But that is what's currently in the plan.
And of course, for a subdivision, this is not necessarily too much of an issue yet, but anything that does end up going in there, that intersection is a difficult one, and kind of known to be difficult around town, which is why, of course, it's being upgraded. But for a subdivision, that really shouldn't be an issue yet. The next stage, it might become an issue.
Future development shouldn't affect this subdivision yet. At the same time, even if there was a redesign of that intersection, that remaining lot would have plenty of frontage on Smith Bridge Road. There's
I was just
no
thinking more about,
shortage.
I was thinking more about traffic impact and
Yeah.
such, but yeah.
So, sorry, I'm going through the checklist here just to make sure
Okay.
we have everything,
Thank you.
but I just
Thank you,
interrupted
Rebecca.
somebody, because we do need to,
They could use old Route 25 from Smith Bridge Road to get to it. I don't know the condition of that
would
bridge,
be
though.
feasible to do right now. The bridge is kind of there, but I don't think that's really feasible.
there's
I
a
don't
bridge.
think there'll be a need to either.
There's actually a bridge.
I think we'll have access off of Route 25.
so my concern right now is driveway. So our subdivision regulations say location of proposed driveways. Now, are we creating a traffic situation? So we don't have proposed driveways here.
It shows it. It's marked on the plan, proposed driveway. Got a little line there that says proposed driveway.
I see, okay.
Yep.
For the
For the,
smaller lot, but
Correct.
the bigger one, okay.
that already has driveways on it, right?
Gotcha.
It's already existing.
Okay, all right, check. And there is public water and sewer available, not easily available, but it is.
It would have to go
available.
across the road, right? We've already talked to the town about that,
It is available.
correct?
Usually someone else fills out, like you fill out the checklist for us, so we're.
Oh, I usually have to?
It comes usually checked off for us, so we can go through, it's totally fine. I just wanna make sure we've got the monuments, which I think that's pretty well documented. We've got a budding property member, existing structures, that's on there, significant natural features, that's on there. We're in the part, the ESZ here for part of this?
We're in A. For zoning, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's correct. It is in the agricultural zoning district, and part of it is subject to the environmentally sensitive overlay zone as well.
And that's not, we don't have the ESC on here. Yeah, so I would probably just ask for that as a,
Your question was what? I'm sorry, if you're
the
asking.
environmentally sensitive overlay zone.
The AZ zone, you mean? Is that what you're talking about?
The environmentally.
ESC.
The ESZ,
ESC, okay.
yeah. It's I think, was it 250 feet from the baker? Is that right?
But this won't be in that
500.
250.
What's that?
This wouldn't be in that 250. The big piece would be,
It's 500.
Yeah, that's over here.
Yeah.
River goes that way. This way.
No, soil type.
I think it's an A.
Yeah, so soil type units as identified by soil series,
Might
described
be,
by the,
Adams type soil, and, well, it's got wetland soils too.
I'm just looking at our regulations. Is that on there? Okay, I see that, all right. Gotcha, thank you. Flood hazard areas, topo contours, year-round water courses. No easements. Except for, old 25.
I think, I don't know if the state gave that up, or you have to check that
What is
out.
the easement?
Status unknown.
Yeah, maybe the state has a record of that road. I think the existing Tenny Mountain Highway was built in 1953 or 4. And that's, prior to that, the road went straight right across in front of Roby's house.
Right.
All right, so we're really getting into like,
So I don't
Bigger
know whether
subdivisions.
it's abandoned, or, you'd have to check with the state, I think.
I don't think it's in my deed about it anymore.
No. I mean, that's like 70 years ago.
And it's the other easements as well.
The only other one that I,
Then the telecommunications easement.
all right, so everything, most everything on the second page seems to mostly apply for regular subdivisions and not minor ones. Because we're talking roads.
Thank you, Rebecca, for going through all this.
My pleasure.
So I make a motion to accept the application as complete.
Second.
Motion and a second to accept the application as complete. Is there any further discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the application is accepted as complete. The subdivision seems to conform to our aerial requirements.
Is that a finding of fact? Should we have the hearing first?
Oh, we should have,
Hey, Matt, you want to say anything about this?
You gotta open the public hearing.
Thank you, Phil.
We've only got one person.
It is 8:38. I will open the public hearing.
I think we're assuming
Is there
it is.
anyone who would like to speak to this application? Hello, Zoom. Hello, Matt.
You're the only one, Matt.
Okay.
No need to bully our audience into participation here.
All right.
That's okay,
There's
thank you.
Frank tonight.
It is, where is Frank? It is 8:38, and I will close the public hearing.
Would you like to proceed with findings of fact?
Yeah, and there's no reason you can't do a finding of fact before the
Oh,
public
no,
hearing.
that's true, that's true.
Wow. It's an ag zone. I can't believe it. I mean, it should be commercial.
Is the whole thing in ag zone?
I believe it is.
It was a farm.
Everything on that side of the road's an A.
That's, yeah, that was,
Everything where
zoning
Market
map
Basket
on
was an A.
Yeah.
thank you,
report.
yeah. That's the weird one where it cuts down and then, yeah. Just because there's a farm on it doesn't make it in the ag zone. Ag
I
zone is just a
remember the
name.
cows.
Still getting
I mean-
paid.
Don't start.
Is that a fact it's in the ag zone?
Sure is.
It meets the lot size,
Road frontage.
town water and sewer,
On the other side of
Is
the road.
accessible. with a little over,
accessibility.
yeah. Not directly served.
Okay, it's all about the words.
It's gonna need wetland delineation.
It's been delineated, it's on
Yes.
that map. It's fully delineated.
Okay.
proposed driveway is noted.
Yeah. Meets all the requirements of our subdivision regulations for a minor subdivision.
And the, just more of a point of information is that Water and Sewer District did provide some detailed feedback about how water and sewer service could be provided. It would include a border jacked service across the highway, since open trenching of Route 25 is prohibited. And then same with the other one, border jack service across the street. If there was a further subdivision or larger scale development requiring water and sewer to multiple buildings, main line extension may be required, so that could include branching off of the current hydrant branch, or potentially open trenching would be okay in a main line extension situation. So that's per Water and Sewer District, though. Just they've outlined what it would entail, but it is available as you stated.
I make a motion that we approve the application.
Second.
2 points of discussion. One, less than 5 acres, sorry, and maybe this was a note here, needs a DES subdivision.
Unless water and sewer is available.
Unless
Water
water
and
and
Sewer,
sewer.
thank you, sorry.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion?
Did you have another point of discussion?
No, the other one is more about the I just like the environmentally sensitive zone on the plans, but because it's the
It's the
parent parcel,
right?
not too worried about it.
Yeah.
All right.
Would you feel better if we said any future development of the parent parcel will require depiction of the environmentally sensitive zone?
I think it's a requirement on the subdivision, yeah. I think, I'm not super concerned about it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, the application is approved, and remember, you need to get, final copies of the Mylar, along with fees, for recording.
Will do. Okay.
All right.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your time.
Have a great night.
You want this?
Sure, that would be great, actually, thanks.
Yeah.
All right. Good night.
Good night.
Looking at our room here, are there any informational or pre-application reviews?
There it is.
Thank you very much.
I'm gonna guess the answer might be a negative.
Nobody has approached us about one, and yeah, seems like no.
Yeah. Other business from members of the planning board and planning staff. Riverside Landing Phase 2 update.
Yep, I have a update on a previously approved development. So Riverside Landing Phase 2, as you may recall, was originally approved by the board for site work around about 2021, and then was recently given an extension to begin development by the board at the end of last year for 2 years. So the applicant still has quite a bit of time to get started there. But after a meeting the other day with the applicant and the prime contractor and their engineer, they have executed a development agreement with the town, which was one of the conditions, and they've also met the condition of opening the escrow account to have the town's engineer do construction inspection. So at this point, and you know, they are very much, all parties are in communication on that. So as soon as they're ready to begin, essentially, they just need to give us that reclamation bond, and then you know, the town's engineer is ready to begin doing those inspections whenever they're ready to begin construction. So it could begin relatively soon, since most of those conditions are now met.
Cleared and ready for takeoff.
This is the proposal on Tenny Mountain Highway that's between Bank of New Hampshire and Dunkin' Donuts.
Yep, correct. It's the site work. It's specifically the site work to raise up and create a development pad on the eastern side, sort of that on Tenny Mountain Highway to the right of the hotel and the bank, where it kind of dips down in between, and then there's that driveway. So any individual developments on that may come in the future would be subject to separate sort of site plan reviews, but this site plan approval given in 2021 was for the raising of that site up and creation of those development pads, which, it seems like, at least we have those conditions now met, so that seems like it could begin soon. I know it was cleared recently, which brought some attention to it as well.
If I recall correctly, he brought us a conceptual design for a hotel.
Correct.
Parcel as well.
Yep, and that would be a site plan review as well at that time when a particular development, that's sort of the commercial co-location section, is each individual business also has site plan review, but the site was given a sort of based on just creating the pad and a concept of what how it could be laid out, but the individual parking, driveways, buildings will be separate. But yeah, it's correct. There was that conceptual consultation a couple months back now.
They have all their state permits, and the
Yeah.
trail is the trail that the Conservation Commission was angling for. They're gonna still have that trail.
My understanding is that all those easements have been provided. Both the trail, I believe, was a town requirement. All the other easements, to my understanding, were DES requirements of the wetlands permit. So my understanding is that the wetlands permit is in place, AOT is in place, as is, and they're working with DOT on a driveway permit. But
I thought there
I think they already
was a little
have one.
hiccup on that trail at one point
There
that they
was,
came in.
but I think it came through in the end.
It did.
Yeah,
It's
they
a
were,
trail easement, right? It's not a trail,
They're not gonna build the said trail.
right, that's what I
correct. I believe the select board accepted an easement
Sure.
at some point with some amount of money for the Conservation Commission to monitor those easements, but I'd have to look back for more specifics on that, but
Yeah, there's two
So-
conservation easements. Those
So-
were as a result of wetlands loss. So that was part of the.
and I think you might be referring to the
mitigation.
fact that they were trying to block the trails from going across the conservation easement.
Oh, maybe.
Is that what you're, or maybe you're not
I don't
referring
know.
to that?
I thought they,
Yeah,
at
there's
some
a
point,
problem
they were
here.
in front of us with
There's
an
a challenge
issue.
because the purpose of the easement is to
In
protect
a nutshell,
wetlands.
Yes.
So-
what do they have? They have the green light to go ahead?
as soon as they get that reclamation bond in place, essentially, they will have met all the conditions necessary to begin
Okay.
work on that creation of that development pad. And then, of course, the town's engineer would need to be doing those inspections, so they need to be in contact with him about, what their proposed timeline is. But as the extension was given towards the end of last year for 2 years, they do still have some time to get that work underway. But now that these conditions are met, there's essentially just that one left from the town's perspective. Of course, if any other state, federal, regional, other permits are, if there are any other things that need to be worked out on those would need to happen, but my understanding is that they've been addressed.
As soon as the reclamation
We didn't have
bond
our
is
things
in
out.
place and the town engineer.
Correct. And then I do have one other piece of information, or not piece of information, one other business. I think would like to introduce, for those who don't know, Amy Lee.
I was like, what? What's
who's-
the news?
Maybe
Yeah, sure. So,
Come to our meetings.
I know. My name is Amy. I am working part-time for Joseph in the planning department and working as assistant town clerk. My intention is to run for town clerk when the time comes, come March. So, but I'm doing both and I'm learning a ton. And Joseph is gonna be out for one of the meetings, so please don't have a lot of questions.
Erin really doesn't want to run.
She does not want to run. She is happy being the deputy. So,
Great.
yeah.
Okay. I do have another piece of business. I just want to say a few words about our August work session, besides now having a 5:30 meeting for the site walk. In August, on the 3rd, as we talked about previously about a month ago or so, this will be a joint meeting with the Housing Committee for the HOP grant. And at this point, we have a Phase 1 and Phase 2 report from them, or draft report, I should say. So you might remember Phase 1 was a needs analysis. Phase 2 is a barriers analysis. And then phase 3, which we're getting to now, and it's going to involve the planning board more closely as well, is the regulatory recommendations and hopefully moving something to town meeting eventually. But for phase 1 and 2 reports are ready to review, and we want at our meeting, our work session in August, at a joint meeting with the committee to discuss those reports. The committee is already beginning to discuss those reports before then. And so the plan is, Joseph, you are off tomorrow, but you might be able to send them out. I can also send them out if you prefer. I can send them out, whichever.
Yeah, they'll get sent out tomorrow
Okay.
to the planning board.
So you should receive a packet tomorrow.
No off days with this guy.
Thank you, Joseph. And which gives you lots of time to look through these reports, so it's not rushed. Gives you like a couple of weeks to actually look through them. So you'll get 2 reports, the needs analysis and the barriers. You will also get 1 or 2 copies, depending if we send both, of the matrix, not to film. The sorry.
It's a comment resolution
It's
matrix.
a comment resolution matrix, yes. So you can all fill these out. Don't handwrite them. They're very specific. So this way they can copy paste them into one larger matrix. And I think there'll be a PDF and a docx, not PDF, a docx and an XLSX copy of this, depending on which you prefer to use. But you can put your comment, and it's kind of self-explanatory, but I guess one of us will send some.
So.
It's pretty simple, but one of us will send a few notes around just to make sure you can understand it or be able to answer a question if we need to. So the meeting is the 3rd, as we already talked about. That'll be that joint session, so be prepared to talk about both of these documents and begin to think about, heading into fall, what this might lead to in terms of regulatory changes as well, which is what's coming next. But certainly be ready to talk about these 2 documents, these draft documents. And then for the 7th, all of your comments will be due. So if you have more comments after the discussion or what have you, just need a little extra time.
These are in the matrices?
On the 7th, you submit the matrices to, I guess, Joseph, who can forward them on to Barrett Planning.
Yeah, they requested if we can send them all together as a batch, so if you just want to send them to me, I can send them a whole batch of everybody's comments at once. I think that's easier for them.
So by the 7th.
Yep.
And we'll repeat that, of course, when we get to the 3rd.
The 7th of August.
Of August, yes. Any questions about that? It's a really impressive bunch of documents, I would say, right?
It's a lot, and it's good information.
Yeah.
It's, I think the thought process going into this whole thing is totally different now, now that we've gone through it and gotten this information. It's just a lot of really interesting information.
All right, that's what I got on that. So we'll be expecting an email then, yeah?
I just wanted to add something before you wrap it up.
Yeah?
I recently completed an intensive 2-day workshop in fluvial geomorphic assessments, which involves flood, stormwater management and bridge design.
Awesome.
So, I do stream crossing permits as part of my wetlands.
That was my favorite course in college.
Fluvial geomorphism.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it.
It's good.
I went to pass that one, I don't think.
Well,
does anyone have an update on what's the downtown project? Meaning like end dates, when they'll start repairing?
Joseph?
So Scott has been delivering reports on that at the select board meetings. I actually don't know the most recent report on that, but you should be able to see on the town's website. There is a page that has updates on the downtown drainage project, and
a lot of them are weekly updates as opposed to like end of
Yeah, I think there's a,
Last I heard from Scott that the project was ahead of schedule because they moved up the running of the pipe through the middle of town, which is gonna start happening the week of the 24th, so that's next week. And if you wanna get on Scott's email, you just let him know.
Or go to the town website and you can sign up for the,
Yeah,
the
it's
the
very
weekly
helpful.
report.
Yeah.
I did hear from one of the workers that I just happened to run into. He said they thought they'd have all the pipe in the ground this year, which is ahead of what they had planned. But then, it'll mean that we have disrupted pavement through the winter, but, it sounded
depends
like.
on what they find.
As a general rule, they don't like to do final paving for about a year.
Right.
After they've disturbed the soils.
Yeah.
And they want it to really settle.
That'll make a better long-term solution for us once they get to that point.
So Matt is still with us. Are there any public comments?
well, Frank Miller wanted me to send his regards, that he's sorry he can't make it. I did speak to him the other day. And
Is he okay?
oh, he's fine, he's fine. I bumped into him on the street the other day and he said he's sorry he can't make it, but he'll definitely be there on the 3rd, and says,
He's sending his
go
public.
home early, tonight on his behalf.
He's sending his comments even when he's not here. That's diligence. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, we are adjourned.
That was a great meeting.
Thank you.
I'm just glad it's not